Hello and welcome. I am Kelly McMasters, Associate Professor of English and Director of Publishing Studies, and it is my honor to introduce our event today. So first, as always, I'd like to thank the director of the Great Writers, Great Readings series, Professor Martha McPhee, as well as Axinn Collins and her team at the Cultural Center for making it possible to have incredible writers visit Hofstra to speak with us every semester. So thank you, Axinn and Carol and everyone back there. The special thing about today's event is we get to continue the conversation after we are here. So please join us if you're able to at the Emily Lowe Gallery to have a nice little informal conversation with the writer today. And we are here today to celebrate the work of Emily Rapp Black, whose powerful work has quite literally changed lives through her writing, her teaching, and her activism. In a few moments, she'll read to us from one of her most recent books, and then join me in conversation on the stage along with Dr. Craig Rustisi, Professor of English, and the Dr. Mervyn Livingston Schloss Distinguished Professor for the Study of Disabilities. But right now, it is my honor to share with you Emily Black Rapp's background and many achievements. Emily has written about loss, disability, parenting, and grief in many magazines, journals, and books, including Poster Child, a memoir, The Still Point of the Turning World, which was a New York Times bestseller and an editor's pick, and a finalist for the PEN USA Award, Sanctuary, Frida Kahlo and My Left Leg, and the forthcoming I Would Die If I Were You, out next year. A former Fulbright scholar, she was educated at Harvard University, Trinity College Dublin, St. Olaf College, and the University of Texas Austin, where she was a James A. Michener Fellow in Fiction and Poetry. The recipient of a Guggenheim Fellowship, she has received awards and fellowships from the Rona Jaffe Foundation, the Gentile Arts Foundation, the Corporation of Yaddo, and more. Her work has appeared in Vogue, the New York Times, the Times London, Lenny Letter, The Sun, the Boston Globe, the Wall Street Journal, the Oprah Magazine, the LA Times, and many other publications and anthologies. Her essays about end-of-life care and palliative care appear frequently in medical and academic journals and anthologies. She is currently Associate Professor of Creative Writing at the University of California, Riverside, where she also teaches in the School of Medicine. Please welcome Emily to the podium.
Thank you so much. Ooh, hello. So I am going to read from the book about Frida Kahlo for an hour. Just kidding. Not going to do that. Don't worry. Everyone's like, oh, no. My work tends to be quite sad, and this is a sad section, but I'm not sad anymore as much, and I'm really funny. So I hope when there's question times, you'll ask me questions. Don't be afraid. So anyway, this book grew out of my lifelong obsession with Frida Kahlo as a kind of mentor across time and history. My brother had a series of rotating girlfriends, one of whom was an art history major and left this book on the table once at Christmas. And I didn't really like her, but I really liked the book. So I was like, what's this? And I just fell into this deep rabbit hole of Frida Kahlo. And back then, back in the day, you had to go to the library and get a card and like go and talk to someone to get a book. So I did that, spent a lot of time immersed in her work, and felt really connected to her on several levels. So that's the sort of origin story of this book, which is the shortest book I've ever written and took me the longest time to write. So do with that what you will. I'm going to read from a short chapter, oh my gosh, okay, called Los Angelitos, which is about going to the Casa Azul and to Frida Kahlo's home. Has anyone been there? Show of hands. It's awesome. If you go to Mexico City, you got to make a trip. And my son had died a year before, and I was pregnant with my daughter, who's now 10. And so that kind of clash of experiences was incredibly intense for me. And at that time, they had just opened up the room where Frida Kahlo had died, which you'd think wouldn't be like, oh, let's go see where someone died. But you'd be wrong. It was thronging, it was just heaving with people, trying to see her bed, trying to see like all the things, because she's become such an iconic figure. Like, you can't walk around in LA without seeing Frida Kahlo tote bag, for example, which is always kind of a strange thing, and great, and also strange. And they had also exhibited her prosthetic limbs and corsets and back braces behind glass. And I'd not expected that. And I was really arrested by that moment, which I can talk about more in the Q&A. But having worn an artificial leg my whole life, a back brace for many years as a child, it was just weird to see them as art objects. And she never showed her prosthetic limbs to anyone that didn't know her well, like a lover or a friend. She hid it with these fantastic costumes, which is also a great exhibit, art exhibit, if you get a chance to see her clothes. Anyway, it sounds like a weird thing, but it's pretty awesome. So in this section, I'm it's a griefy section, as they kind of all are, but it's about this idea of containing the experience of loss and hope and expectation at the same time. My son was just almost 3 when he died. He did not have a happy life. He had a very awful terminal illness. And to be pregnant with another child is just a strange, just like I say, clash of experiences. And I think I might need reading glasses finally, which is a little bit alarming to me, but it's okay. Okay, so here we're in Guanajuato, Mexico, which is near San Miguel, and it's the birthplace actually of Diego Rivera, who was Frida Kahlo's husband. A quick note about that. He was much older, 20 years older, and they met because he was painting a mural at her school called The World. Just epic. Can you imagine? Like, there's my future husband painting the world on my school wall. It's like, no wonder she liked him. Okay, Los Angelitos. At the museum in the birthplace of the artist Diego Rivera in the city of Guanajuato, Mexico, the same place where his nude portrayal of Frida hangs, there is a gallery of portraits called Los Angelitos. The museum itself is like a stop-time photograph from a different age. Various rooms of the house are staged, although some are off limits, and visitors move through the available spaces as if moving through an imagined day in the life of a family whose furniture remains intact, though its members are long dead. The bedroom with thick wooden furniture and canopied crib for a tiny Diego, surrounded by a braided cloth rope to ward off those who might be tempted to touch. The impressive entrance hall is lined with art in gold frames, once-used dishes now stacked behind spotless glass. The only sounds are the shuffling of curious feet and muted voices in English, Spanish, and German. On the top floor of the house, in the upper rooms full of light, are the Little Angels, 2 white-walled galleries of carefully curated photographs of babies being held by parents, siblings, single mothers, and single fathers, all dressed in fancy clothes that are neatly pressed and clearly seldom worn. In some of these family portraits, older children with dark wings of hair over their eyes lean on one elbow over the baby, who is usually lying on a table or positioned in the arms of a solemn-looking parent. Solemnity was usual in the 19th century photograph, so this does not surprise me. I look at the dark-haired families, I stare into the faces of the children, the parents, the babies. Because my son Ronan was blind for a year before he died, when he too was still a baby, it takes me a full 20 minutes of looking at the photographs to realize that the babies are dead, and not just afflicted by the unique vulnerability of being a baby and having no choice but to rely on the goodness of others, of the world. I am used to the sight of the sightless after so many long hours singing into the face of a baby who would never see me fully, never know me apart from the animal instinct he was born with that told him I was his mother. I assumed they were baptismal photos. The father of the child I carry inside me has been walking silently behind me. When I turn around and see his face, I realize my mistake. Are they dead? I ask him, as if they have just died, and I am asking for confirmation. He nods. His eyes are dark and glittering. I thought they were being baptized. The babies in the portraits mounted on the walls where Diego Rivera was born are wearing burial gowns that are frilly and white, and as elaborate and delicate as baptismal gowns. Looking more closely, I can see that the way the living person interacts with the camera is different from the stillness of the babies. In death, even their bodies are mute, although it is those silent bodies that tell the whole story of every other person in the photograph. I feel dizzy with the bizarre meaning of time in this lit upper room. Everyone in these photographs is dead. But in this isolated, unrepeatable, documented, mummified moment, only the babies have marched forward out of measured time. Their blank eyes offer only reflection of where they have gone, which is a place from which there is no return, no going back, an unknown to which we are all headed, and about which there are no believable reports. Why can these babies not tell us what we need to know? The room is suddenly loud with Ronan's voice, the way it faded and quickened in the minutes before he died and then stopped. The way it was always a collection of sounds that never shaped into words because there was a neuron path that had been burned to the ground of his brain, and smoldering and useless, became part of a decimated forest it would take a figure from a fairy tale to heal or resurrect. A forest of personality and personhood that nobody, not even he, the inhabitor of it, would ever visit or know or recognize. I feel a surge through my body of something that is not grief or anger, but a necessary numbness that acts as a net through which I view the photos in the rest of the gallery. I feel light-bodied and cold. I do not want to run out. I want to see these babies the way I did not want to see my son's face in the hours after he died, but did so anyway, lifting the embroidered shroud again and again, not wanting to see, wanting to see. His eyes would not stay closed, although his body was heavy, so I closed them again and again, trailing the bitten edges of my nails through his long eyelashes. I was not weeping then, but choking and dreaming with disbelief, relief, release, alienation, exquisite, terrible attention. I would be left to tell his story and not the other way around. A fairy tale grinding backward, a gruesome reverse. One day you have a leg, the next day it is no longer, the story I knew well. One day a beloved, the next day no longer. One day a mother, the next day no longer. What kind of life is this for a body? I descend from the top staircase of the museum through the rooms of modern art and sculpture and out into the street where it has been raining for hours, slowly and lightly. Our clothes smell of the strong detergent used at a lavanderia where we have had them washed by a young mother whose 3-month-old baby coos and kicks in the cot next to a long line of washing machines that spin and stop and whir at different intervals. He was fussy when we went to collect our clothes. His hair was thick and dark and straight. I put my finger on his forehead and he looked at me with his seeing eyes and then fussed a bit less. That I was able to comfort him flattened me. For what good is a mother whose child has died? The week before I arrived in Mexico, I discovered in a drawer, stuffed in with receipts, underwear, and stray gym socks, a single red mitten that was Ronan's, and the shirt that I cut from his body after his death, printed with rockets and planets arranged in a whimsical pattern like a dream of the beyond. I had been moving both items around in various drawers for months, always wondering what happened to the pants that went with the shirt I cut off. Where were the matching space pants? I never bothered to actually look for them, so I never found them. Ronan's not an angel, I say all the time to anyone who will listen. God doesn't have him. Who does? It is Christmas in Mexico, and all around this city, with its winding cobbled streets and ringing bells, we have watched people marching purposefully to cathedrals, holding baby Jesus figures decked out in festive costume and plucked from the home creche to be blessed by the priest. It is men who do this ritual shuttling of the doll, their precious inanimate bundles wrapped in brightly colored blankets, printed with the image of wide-eyed animated bears and Hello Kitty. Dry leaves cross the Zocalo, the plazas, the polished holiday shoes of the living children, headed to Mass or headed home. Angels. Perhaps they exist in some other world, but it is not enough. Rebecca Solnit, in The Faraway Nearby, quotes Mary Shelley, author of Frankenstein, writing in her journal in March 1815 about the death of a child. I dreamt that my little baby came to life again, that it had only been cold and we rubbed it before the fire and it lived. Awoke and found no baby. I think about the little thing all day. The parents of the dead babies in the photographs in the Diego Rivera Museum hold them as if they are alive, as if they are looking for a fire before which to rub them awake, their faces drawn with resignation and an unspoken ambition to solve the unsolvable. Sometimes I hold the plaster cast a friend made of Ronan's hand and pretend it is warm and real. I trace the creases in the palms and examine the white material of his fingernails for imagined dirt. In the bakeries, I select hot loaves of bread and glistening pastries with silver tongs and arrange them on a tray. Guanajuato is known as the haunted city because of the mummy museum. I deliberately avoid the mummies. I have heard some of them are actually not so old, which is somehow more horrible, and that they were given to the museum when their families didn't have enough money to bury them. A newer mummy seems scarier than one that has been dead for centuries. I know that the dead and the living are believed to coexist here, walking side by side, but I want to walk next to my living son, if he'd been able to walk. At night, when the otherwise nonstop dance party on the roof next door to the rented house takes a brief hiatus and I fall asleep, I have dreams in which Ronan is helpless in some foreign land. Someone is putting him on a plane, but they do not know how to care for him, how to support his head, how to feed him, and he will die. People want to hurt him, but I don't understand why, and this makes me murderous. People are trying to blind him, although he is already blind. They want to hurt him, cross every boundary of cruelty, and in my dreams I try to kill them with my hands, bombs, knives, rockets, words, anything that can be fashioned or shaped into a weapon. I wake up frightened by my rage, by a feeling of impotence that is the loss of love. I thrash around, slobber and pant, and cannot be coaxed back to sleep. I listen to the music next door. I think suddenly I should get up and dance. But I lie still and think of the portraits of dead babies, Los Angelitos. The sounds of the techno music and shouts of the living mix with the imagined voices of the unnamed dead babies, who leap from their portraits and form a circle on the floor of the well-lit upper gallery in the home of the dead artist, in a country where skeletons walk with the living in artwork and lie half buried in the ground. And inside that circle sits my son, telling a story of what we all need to know, although nobody can stay awake or asleep long enough to hear what he is saying. Only the babies cheer him on, with their language of coos and kicks and hiccups. Beholden to no one, they say only what they want to hear. Ronan keeps turning the pages of a book that nobody else can read, his own story. The story of ordinary babies and ordinary time, and the people who are left behind to mourn both. That's it. Yeah, that's it. And I stole this book. I'll give it back. Sorry about that. Should I just stop? Okay, let's go to the stage. Okay.
Testing. Okay, I think they're on. Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Sure. Although I have a disability studies hat, I'm going to ask a craft question.
Oh, great. Love that.
And your poster child was a pretty straightforward linear narrative. Mm-hmm. And then, as even a short reading might hint at here, you're moving back and forth in lots of times and spaces, and this one to things that you talked about in poster child, to the experience of losing Ronan, having Charlie afterwards, moments in Frida's life. And I'm wondering how you thought about structure or thought about whatever sorts of guideposts you might have been offering your readers.
It's a great question. I mean, I had really good editors. So I'm the writer that's like, here's a 900-page book. And they're like, what is wrong with you? So Poster Child is a coming-of-age story. So many people in here might be writing something like that. So a lot of firsts. And it's very chronological because in those first 20-some years of life, everything is kind of new in some sense. So that was always the case with that book, which started as essays, which moved around in time and then shifted. But what I wanted to do with Frida Kahlo, which is why it took me so long to write, So I wanted to play with like the two versions of time that the Greeks talk about. So kairos time, meaning the time of COVID or winter, and chronos time being like, it's 2:40. We started 2:40, right? So I wanted to play with that. In part because, my connection to Frida Kahlo is entirely in my imagination. So it had to be something like, I am not an artist at all. In fact, it's a joke what I can draw, which is like a stick figure. I am not an art historian. I don't speak Spanish. I'm not from Mexico. Like, I really wanted to be mindful of the way in which I engaged with her work was about my own obsession with her as a mentor about how to transmute or alchemize pain into art, which doesn't make the pain meaningful, but it does make it that. You know what I mean? I want to be very careful about saying pain makes you an artist. Like, it's just pain. You can't do anything when you're in pain except be in pain. So I wanted to reject that, but the reality was a lot of the procedures that she had done were very similar to mine, only 20 years later in like rural Wyoming at like the poor farm hospital, right? So I wanted to pay homage to the fact that I had had some similar experiences as she did, yeah. Although I didn't get any morphine, which she got a lot of drugs, and I guess I didn't, and that's okay, but I think about that and I'm like, it could maybe been a little less painful, but apparently not so much in the 80s. So yeah, it's a good question, and I think people struggle with that, especially when they're telling their life story. But I definitely am more of a crossing time fan than a chronological time. But I think that shifts. It's just different with coming of age because you have to there's so much change that happens in those first 2 decades. Yeah. Also had a good editor for everything.
You spoke about the difference between that this started or moving between memoir, essays, right? And you've written memoir. These are essays. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how you know what form the story wants to take?
So this actually came out of an assignment that a friend of mine, the writer Tina Frangello, we were in Mexico doing something else, teaching, and I was just, mad. I was angry. I was having a rage face. And she's like, why don't you go write an angry death essay? And I was like, okay. And I went back to my room and I did that. And that became this book. I can't remember which one it is now, but I just let it rip. And she published it in the Rumpus. I think she was the editor at the time. I think it was called Casa Azul Cripple. I should know this since I wrote it. But and then it started to feel like a book. I think essays tend to be, they have a different kind of intensity. It's like if you eat like a really nice piece of dark chocolate with something exciting inside versus like an entire Hershey bar, right? They have to be really sort of focused. There's a joke about me, well, I'm sure there's many jokes about me among my students, but one of them is that I'm the yogurt machine of essays. Like I just pull a lever and then an essay comes out in a bowl. It's like, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I do feel like sometimes someone will say something to me and it's kind of an isolated incident, it has some context, but it doesn't feel like it has a long view or a big landscape, and I'm like, that's an essay. And I think the more you train yourself to be highly observant in the world, if you do want to write, the more you'll find those moments. And you'll be like, okay, this isn't a novel, what just happened, but it's a very sort of pinned moment where my attention was totally arrested. And there is some context around it that I can explore that will move in and out of time away from that actual incident, but doesn't have that long tail, right? Yeah. So I think it's just you read it aloud and you're like, do I want to know more? Am I already bored? Or is this something that's just right?
So about Frida. At different points in the book, you ask, why do we love Frida? What do we want from Frida? I'm pretty sure you think some of the answers to those questions are misguided.
Yep.
So maybe why do you think we should love Frida? Mm-hmm. What do you think we should want or ask from Frida? you want to speak to those questions?
Yeah, I love that. I think, I do get a little bit pissy, I'll say, when people are like, oh, she created out of her pain. I'm like, let's talk about that for a minute, because I don't know. I think excruciating pain is pretty all-encompassing and not something that births art. What I think happens is that an artist is put under pressure, in this case, physical pain, in Frida's case, and decides to make art regardless, and in that way alchemizes the experience and transmutes it into something different. Now, would she have been an artist of her caliber without having those experiences? Probably. She just would have been a different one, right? So I do sometimes think that we fetishize pain. In this culture, we fetishize it, even though we're afraid of it, which is weird. And she's also become this kind of poster child, not to use that word, which is problematic, of disabled people being like extraordinary and working out of their pain, and like, well, if we have this one disabled artist in our collection, then we don't have to have anyone else, kind of this tokenism idea. And I've been to a lot of museums with Frida Kahlo work, and I listen to what people say, and sometimes I'm like, want to say something, but I don't, because I don't want to embarrass my child. But like, oh, wasn't it? It's so tragic. She was so pretty. Like, what a waste of a pretty face. I've heard that about her work. I've had that told to me, which is ridiculous. So there's this weird, like, wow, let's look at her body and like analyze it and like really get attached to these stories of pain, especially art historians. They love to talk about the bus accident in these very graphic terms. It turns into like an episode of like Law and Order SVU or something. It's like meant for entertainment, and it isn't. It's like it was someone's experience. So I think the way people have talked about her is a lot of different things going on. Sexism, like ableism, racism. It's all of those things connected. But for me, it was just that she had her journals just, they were so much like what I was writing, only in a different context. And that her imagination, like, if anyone's ever been in the hospital for any period of time, you really need to read and have an imagination, or you will just, like, wither. Like, maybe not now. People be on Instagram, but this is the 80s. We had nothing. We had, like, Dynasty. That's it. It's a bad show, for those of you who don't know it. Anyway, bad cable TV. So, she was incapacitated a lot of the time. I was also incapacitated a lot of the time. So I had a very rich imagination. I had to. And I loved it. I kind of, I didn't love being in the hospital all the time, but I did like reading. So I think it just so much about her life was connected to, but also disconnected from her body, which I found really interesting, because when you have something about your body that's non-normative, which I would argue most people do at some point, people really want to focus on that. And of course, it is a big deal. I mean, being disabled is expensive in this country, but it's also not the only thing I'm interested in. So it's this strange, like, like you have to sort of have this balancing act between two worlds that you don't really fit into 100%. So there's a lot of that going on, I think, in my attitude towards Frida. I mean, it is a little weird to see like Frida Kahlo like shower curtains at like Walmart. And I've had students, students where I teach are largely Spanish-speaking origin, a lot of dreamer kids. And they're just like, why? They're taking our holidays now? Like, they're taking our people, like taking our artists. And I'm like, well, people are attracted to her work for a reason. It's intense, no matter who you are. So, there's those conversations are always really nuanced and really fun to have with people who maybe have just encountered her work. And not like me as like a weirdo kind of, obsessing about everything she ever did. But that's also fun. I would encourage everyone to find someone they're obsessed with from history. Like Mary Shelley's my other one. Like I'm like a Mary Shelley, I'm not really an encyclopedia, but I teach Frankenstein whenever I can. It's like one of my favorite books. And, having that connection with, we write stories to connect with people across time and history and culture. And so if there's someone like that you're interested in, I say, like, go all in. Like, lean into that, because it'll teach you a lot about who you are and who you're not, and who you want to be as a writer or a person or an artist, in any case. Yeah.
I want to stay with pain for a minute.
Okay, let's do it.
In this book, you write that Frida, she made her pain visible in a way she herself chose. The rest stayed hidden. And I love that quote so much. But this is also the purview of the memoirist. And so I wondered if you could talk a bit about how you choose what to disclose and that balance between vulnerability and privacy, and through Frida if you want, but also just for your own work.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think I share with Frida is that she didn't have a lot of privacy in her life. Like, if you have a lot of things that have to happen with your physical form, you are constantly in some kind of open-backed robe, being prodded and looked at and measured and talked about. And so I have never had any kind of sense of privacy until I started writing memoir. I know. Because I was like, oh God, you know, you're in an elevator and someone's like, what happened to you? What's wrong with you? Like, and I'm like, oh yeah. So, you know, I come from a very Midwestern family. My dad's a pastor. My mom is like a pastor's wife, so I'm taught to be nice. Now I'm not as nice. I've gotten over it. But I used to be like, and smile and tell the story. And now I'm like, I wrote a book. You can buy it. Goodbye. Conversation closed. And it really works. Well, because people are like, oh, rude. I'm like, well, kind of a rude question, but okay. Or, you know, so I think for me, telling the story the way I want to curate it is better than having someone kind of gawking or asking me really personal questions in confined spaces. Weird. Or like when I ski with my daughter, I ski without my prosthetic, and people are always clapping at me. Like, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Or just being like, you're awesome. Like, you don't even know me. Like, and okay, maybe I'm being a little sensitive, but she's always like, why are people doing that? She's like, you're just skiing. I'm like, this is an excellent question, and I don't know. So I think that what to disclose and what to reveal, I think you have to disclose enough that people feel like you are being truthful, but there's always a part of every story that's only for you. Like, I especially felt this when I was writing, whenever I write about my son, who's not alive to, you know, tell me that was wrong or whatever. And, you know, I think there are some moments about his life and even his death that no one will ever know except me and the people who were there. And to know that that he's known in this way that I have controlled is incredibly empowering to me, and makes me feel like then I can have my own experience that no one knows about, and that the shadow of that is present in what's on the page, but not all the way there. So, because there is that kind of like fascination, it's linked, I think, in some ways to like the 19th century freak show, or like that movie. What's the movie with Hugh Jackman that I can't watch because it makes me so... Thank you. I was like, oh my God, you know, this is me. You know, that was a big, you know, oh, look at the weird person. And if you grow up with that feeling, like as Frida did, it's just a really weird, it's so strange to be a body, with a person with a body. People are always asking you questions about it. Like, and if that's not happened to you, and someone does ask you, like say you break your foot, you have to use crutches, like, report back, because people will be like, try to mimic how you walk. That's one of my favorites. Like, oh, what you doing? Or you get around well. I was like, who are you? Like, I'm getting some Cheerios. Like, leave me alone. So I think it's up to the writer, but I do think it's important to know like 10 to 20% is sort of kept inside, and that makes me feel like I have created my own privacy by choosing to tell these really intense personal stories in my own way. Yeah.
So this sort of follows on your discussion about having an anomalous body. Two of the chapters are entitled Crippled Body. Mm-hmm. And as you're in some of the flashbacks, it seems as though the word cripple or crippled has meant different things to you mm-hmm. at different times. Mm-hmm. Do you want to speak to that word?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a word that I would have used ever until this sort of moment in culture when we started to reappropriate words and call back their power. And there's still, I mean, it's difficult because of course it is a pejorative word, but it's also used a lot by the disabled community, like Crip Power, Crip Fit. Like, it's become a hashtag, so it's known in that context. what I like about it is that it's just basically like I get to say it and no one else can. Basically just bratty, all of my, but I have had a different, relationship with it. I think, one of the things, people that have been on Instagram their whole lives won't understand this, but back in the day, we didn't have the internet. I know, it's crazy. And I didn't know anyone else that had a disability except for Vietnam veterans, who all were really sad men who would chain smoke in the prosthetic office. I know. And I'm 6, standing around in my underwear, and they're like, "Nom." You're like, "Oh, this isn't normal." I thought it was great. Or, just the way that prosthetics has shifted and changed. It used to be so just you've gone to the worst dive bar ever in your underwear. And there you are. So that has shifted. And I think I really am grateful for subsequent generations of people that live with disabilities for just being all out there, just really showing their bodies in a way that is beyond the sexual fetishization that often happens, but is just this is me, that movie that I can't watch without losing my mind. This is who I am, and we're all embodied and we're all different. But that's also, it requires a lot of it's an emotional burden, right? I mean, it's when you're really sad, or I remember I used to not think I was doing really great with Ronan when he was sick, and then I would go into my classrooms and they'd be like, "Are you okay?" And I'd be like, "Oh my God." And I'd look at myself and be like, "Oh God, I look so sad." So this interaction with the world is so charged when you have a body that people love to comment on in whatever way. So it has changed. I mean, I don't know. I feel like language is a tool. And we get to choose how to use those tools as long as we're not using it for malevolent purposes. And, it kind of feels fun to use the word crippled sometimes. And others, I wouldn't want someone to come up to me and say that. And I've had people do that, of course. But I like the reclaiming of it. I guess that's not exactly, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I like to reclaim it. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's great. All right, so I have a fascination with journals, as we already talked about, and so this book was particularly exciting because so much was in conversation with Frida's journals, and then you also brought in your mother's, the recovery room journal. So, and even here today, you talked about that feeling of falling into a rabbit hole, finding this this object that really would have a part in the rest of your life. And so can you talk about and maybe even thinking back to that privacy question, right? What is that like to have a relationship with someone's private thoughts, journals, who is not alive, who you never met? And how, if you keep journals, how does that work with creativity, or how did you see that working with Frida's creativity?
Question. Yeah, my journals are sort of sad to-do lists, and then they devolve into whining, right? I think I actually have done more of it than I have in the past. I always tell my students that if you're going to keep a journal, be intentional about it, is my advice, and then I bring out my Jesus journal from high school, and there's not a single mention of Jesus in this journal at any point. It's just boys, boys, boys. And I'm like, does anyone want to read this? And they're like, that's terrible, make it stop. And I'm like, there you go. I didn't have a lot of intention in my writing. When I read the Frida book, I felt less alone. Because I didn't know any women with prosthetic legs, I only knew men. All my doctors were men. All the leg makers were men. And you'd go into the room and they'd have a cut out of the body with all the tendons and what was wrong and how to fix it. And she had these beautiful photographs of herself with no shirt on and being all sexy and with a prosthetic leg. And I was like, what is this? It wasn't my experience, and it intrigued me. She was literally the first disabled person who was a woman that I ever encountered in my life, because I'm from a very small town in Wyoming. So that was just revelatory to me. And I think a lot of those journals, you feel weird sometimes reading them because you're like, oh God, would Sylvia Plath really want us to know this? I don't know. But I want to know it. So I think you just have to, with the Kahlo, with her third journal, a lot of it was, in some ways, it was the words, yes, but it was her attention to color. Like, she had all these different ways of saying green, right? And the photo, and just the pictures, like she could, I mean, obviously she's a painter, she could draw. It's like the dumbest thing ever to say, but she could draw, and I couldn't draw. So I was like, oh my God, look, these depictions of bodies are so beautiful, and they're bodies like mine. And I'm telling you, that was not happening in any other part of my life at all. So that, I think, those interactions with people's thoughts and feelings, it's really beautiful. It's so intimate, right? I think if we think of it as intimate and not voyeuristic, it's a fine line. But I think Mary Shelley's journals, like, come on. Like, I mean, I've read them all. Kafka's letters are so weird, partly because he's writing to people who have already died and imagining their responses. Yeah, he was an odd one. And they're just so beautiful because they're so, like, writing a letter, like learning how to write a really good letter to somebody is a good skill. That's when we used to do that back in the day, remember? I know. My parents still have every letter I wrote them when I was living abroad. But basically postcards that all ended with, I need more money. They'd be like, I went to this amazing cathedral, and also, could you wire me some money? So that probably says a lot about me in those letters, anyway.
So some of my students are here, but I also have a morning section. And in both classes, we were reading together a piece you wrote, Storytelling as Activism.
Oh, right.
And a number of them asked, so you talk in that piece about a group of women with disabilities who had reached a point where they had come out, and I think you used the expression, had become badass. And my students want to know about when you came out and became badass.
Oh my God, I love that question. The best question I've ever been asked. I mean, it was late for me. Actually, there's a scene in the Frida Kahlo book where I go back to my parents' hometown, which is like a town of 800 people who've known each other their whole lives, and it's in the middle of nowhere in Illinois. So just picture that, just corn. Just corn. All white people, all probably related. Okay, that's where they're from. And I went to Walmart because my mom wanted liquor, which meant wine. And I said, Mom, wine and liquor, whatever, just get it. So I went in and I showed them my ID, and I'm 32 at this point. And they're like, Emily Rapp. They're like, are you Roger and Mary's little crippled girl? And I was like, yep, that's me right here. And that was my coming out, I think. I was just like, that is so funny and awful at the same time. And I've just become more and more, the older I get, the more I'm just like, I really don't care. Like, now I'm really into designing prosthetic covers. Like, I wear shorts all the time. Like, I don't try to hide it anymore. But if you're told by well-meaning, quote, people your whole life to hide it, pass as this, pass as that, it's really hard to unravel. It helps that my older brother is gay, and he came out in when it was, not cool to be gay. It was scary, especially in Wyoming. So he and I are really, he's my person, because we've really talked a lot about that, like the shame around being who you are. And then, of course, you tell people that really love you and they accept you, hopefully, in the best case scenario, but that shame remains, right? So I feel like I'm still in my process of coming out and just being, I think it's just partly getting old and just being like, I'm so tired of being nice to people when they're rude. Like, I mean, I'm sure you can be rude, it's okay. But like, I don't want to feel shame about it anymore because this is the only body I've got. And I have treated it badly, I've treated it well. It's the only home I'll ever have that's mine and mine alone. And that is something that it's easy to say and harder to live. But that's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah. I have some really cool looking legs too, it helps. Yeah, they're expensive, but they're worth it.
I love that question too. And speaking of questions, we are going to pivot in just a minute, maybe after one or two more, to your questions. So get them ready, and the mic is right there. So just this past week, in the New York Times, Emma Pate, I don't actually know how to say her last name.
She quoted me or something, right?
Yes?
Yeah,
my gosh. Okay, well, yes. Don't steal my thunder.
Sorry.
So in the Times opinion pages, this writer, Emma, wrote a piece called Trading Hope for Reality Helps Me Parent Through the Climate Crisis. And this was in reference to parenting without hope. And she wrote, I often think of the writer Emily Rapp Black, whose son Ronan died just before his 3rd birthday. And then she quotes you, "This is what parenting a child with no future has taught me. Nothing is forever," Emily wrote in a 2013 essay. Quote, "There is only now, the moment, the love you bear, the knowledge that loving is about letting go, and that the power of a person's grief is a reflection of the depth of their love." And I wanted to just ask about that idea of grief and hope and these things living together at the same time, and how you managed to both move through that in your life as well as on the page, and be that for somebody. That was a 2013 essay, so that was almost 15 years ago, and that still means so much to that writer.
I mean, I think that's kind of the reality that most people live without, that something happens where they're shown that that's the truth, right? So one of my closest friends, actually the reason I know her is because she read that New York Times article, and she works in rural Guatemala at a school that she started, and there's a lot of things going on there that she couldn't talk to anyone about because it was this like great joy and great grief and all of these systems of oppression and sadness and loss at the same time as beauty and joy. And so we met through that kind of connection. And I think a lot of people have those experiences. I think for me, the thing is it just never stopped. I kind of felt like once I had another kid, I would just be like, it'd all be fine. And she's fine. But then I'm like, oh, she's got to go to college. And I told her, I was like, there's a parent dorm at every college that you'll want to go to that I'll be living in. And she's like, really? I didn't know about that. And then I heard her telling her friends, and I was like, I'm sorry, that was a joke. It's like, not a parent dorm. Or I was like, I'm going to staple you to my face. She's like, no. But like now it's like letting go, but in a different way. But it's not as painful, obviously. But it still has that potential of loss, right? When you really love someone, the idea of losing them is just so gutting. And one of the things I learned from the group of women who I used to run a workshop for women who'd lost children, various ways, murder, illness, accident, at all different ages, at all different times. And it just can happen to anyone. And when you know that, it's terrifying, but at least it's true. It's not this kind of fairy tale, fantasy fairy tale of the happy nuclear family or the happy, parenting. Especially parenting has gotten such a strange sort of weird bougie sheen to it. It's not really what it's about. It's all about letting go. It's all about letting go of control. And so I still feel like I'm doing that still. It's just under less fire. Obviously, Ronan's situation was so extreme, so intense. And, my kid going to camp now, it's like I share that with people, which is nice because no one knew what I was talking about when I was like, and then he has to have his lungs suctioned. And they're like, what? And now I'm like, just to pack a bag for camp. She's going to camp by herself. And they're like, I know. It's just like you feel more accompanied on those more traditional or sort of less challenging routes, I suppose. But I do think it's something that, I don't know. I think you can't have the one without the other. Like you can't have love without the loss in there. Otherwise, why would you love it? Like you don't want to lose it, right? It's just like you can't be funny if you're not sad. You can't. It's this contrast of dark and light, right? Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
Should we give the audience a chance?
I think so. Are you ready? All right, so the mic is right there. Just make sure that you speak into it, and feel free. Who's going to be the brave first person? Oh, it's dueling.
Church. It's like The Price is Right. Run down.
Is it right?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Caitlin. I wanted to ask, in a lot of your writing in here today, you mentioned how Frida was like the first person you could relate to and see that in media and everything like that. But you saw her a little bit older. Like it wasn't it was like, I believe, high school or something like that, or middle school. And I was wondering if, had you seen someone you could relate to like that in media earlier on or around you in your life? Do you think your outlook on life or perspective on certain issues might have changed, or how you view things around because you had more representation around you?
Yeah, it's a great question, and that is actually true. I mean, I started skiing when I was little, and so I knew a lot of people with different kinds of disabilities who were on skis. I think it was just, what was unique about Frida was that she was an artist. She was she was interested in the kinds of things that I was interested in. So I have a really good friend who's from Long Island, and I can't remember where, Huntington something? Anyway, she's a professional athlete. She has the same disability that I do. She runs like the regular triathlons with dudes. Like, she's a pro athlete. I met her when I was in high school, and that was huge for me. But I right away knew that I wasn't going to be a pro athlete. Like, no. I mean, I like doing things, but I wasn't that, right? So Frida was really the only artistic person, someone with the same kind of sensibility, like someone would want to go to an art museum. Like, I used to make my parents drive 2 hours to see movies in Chinese in Denver, because I was like, I need to see culture. And they're like, oh my God, is this movie over yet? Like, so I always wanted to do things that were not available in a town that's really tiny, where it's horses and cattle ranchers and a lot of Jesus. And so I always felt like an outsider. And with Frida, I was like, oh my God, look at these beautiful colors. Like, look at all these places she's going. Like, so I did have my athletes. But that's its own kind of problematic thing. But that was also really helpful. But those early impressions, like being 4 or 5 and holding ashtrays for Vietnam vets in like the prosthetic rooms while Playboy from like 1970 is like kind of open on the table. My dad just left. He went, like, I don't know what he did. He probably went to a bar or something. He just left me there. I was just like, wow, okay, this is what disabled people do. Like, they go to war and they smoke. And then, of course, that changed. But that stayed with me. And I have a real soft spot for veterans for that reason. Not soft spot, but I've seen them now in all these different iterations. Wooden legs to legs that I have. And now the veterans could be my children. Real weird. But still, that was my first impression. So yeah, it definitely would have changed it, I think. If I'd had Instagram, well, who knows? I probably my head would have exploded. But, there just wasn't representations. Or you know how Target had for a while those kids with artificial legs in their advertising? My dad saw one in Denver and sent me the same photo like 10 times upside down just to make sure I got it. But that would never have happened when I was a kid. It was just like, hide it, be normal, look a certain way. So yeah, it would have changed a lot, I think. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Greetings.
Hello.
My name's Avery Stenstrom, and first I want to ask how you're doing today.
I'm good. How are you? Or well. I'm supposed to say well.
I'm
well.
awake.
That's good.
I just wanted to ask, mainly because this new age of technology with AI and the book bannings and the threat on literature and the suppression of making everything sort of the same box in and out, in and out, in and out. I just wanted to ask, how do you sort of fight against that fear of sort of a mixture of imposter syndrome of the greats beforehand and also the fear of the future of, oh God, whatever I write might get me in jail.
Oh yeah, there's that. That's a really good question. I think most writers have a kind of imposter syndrome. I kind of worry when people don't. You know what I mean? I'm like, really? And then you read it and you're like, oh. I think doubting is part of being a writer, but to not spiral into this self-flagellation or I'm crap, I'll never write anything good. And then also, yeah, I think the role of a writer is to make people uncomfortable. And to make them feel less alone. Both of those things can coexist in the same book, same essay, same poem. So that's what I try to do. I sort of feel like this is supposed to be impactful. Even if it's I'm working on a crime novel of all things, which is not impactful in the sense that it's deep. It's just fun, right? So that can be impactful. It doesn't have to be all grief and loss all the time. But I think for me, it's just finding new ways to write, different things to do, writing for TV or writing crime or writing about writing, which is something I said I'd never do and now I'm doing. So don't say that. Just don't say I'll never do that because then you'll do it, right? and I don't know, I find it fun because I feel like in the job that I have, my students who are much younger are very much into this. Ooh, I'm talking too much. It's going off. It doesn't even want to hear what I have to say. Oh, there we go. It's okay. It's fine. They're like, oh yeah, but AI spit out this. Like, we talk about these things, and it's just so interesting because this is their world, right? And yeah, AI freaks me out, though. I will say that. And it's especially weird with prosthetics because there's some now you talk to them and they do things, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not talking. I do enough talking out loud. Like, I'm not going to talk and have it move. Like, it's weird to me. But for someone else, it might be useful, right? So I just think it's like knowing who you are and who you're not. And that can change all the time. But knowing, like, on a sort of regular basis, like checking in, like, is this really what I want to do? Is this, like, aligned with who I want to be? And proceeding as well as you can. And knowing it's not always going to work out the way you want it to. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Hannah. I'm the president for DREAM here at Hofstra, which
Cool.
is the undergrad disability organization. I feel like it's echoing. I have a question that's sort of related. Oh, that's making a weird noise.
It likes you. It's just like, hello.
Hello. So I know you found like your community like later on in life. How do you think like social media is like impacting like people finding their community?
I think it's huge. I mean, it's both really connected and totally disconnected,
Yeah.
right? You know what I mean? Like, I think in terms of disability, it's interesting to me because I like I was saying before, I really admire people who are like willing to put their, like, anyone who's willing to put their picture of themselves in a bathing suit on public social media. I'm like, wow. Like, I'd never do that. Like, it's not that generation. But I think it's to see the mix of different kinds of bodies, like, that just didn't exist when I was a kid. Like, there was one magazine, like 17, and I don't know what else, like Tiger Beat or something, and everyone looked the same. Like, there was an ideal person, right? And now there really isn't, I feel like. And there still probably is somewhere, but we just don't. If you go on Instagram and you type in like bodies something, you'll get all these people and you're like, wow, it's like a community of people. Is it a community or is it just representation? I don't know. Like, I think, I'm not sure what social media is doing in terms of creating community, but it's definitely generating images that we wouldn't otherwise see in our world. And that, I think, is great. It's also scary for all the reasons that everyone knows, but I don't know. I just feel like the more real bodies we see, the more real we feel. And I think that there are a lot of people doing that work in all kinds of different fields, actors and artists, politicians. Like, it's just more, I don't know if it's just more people, there are more people, but it's in the world, but there are just more people willing to be who they are now because they have a platform for it. Whereas before you were just like, you know, the only one, right? Mm-hmm. It's a good question.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Monica. I'm a disability studies minor.
Oh, cool.
You touched a little bit already on the idea of coming out as disabled, and as someone with an invisible disability, I've kind of thought about the empowerment and yet pain that comes with blending in. Mm-hmm. In the Hofstra Museum, there are these prosthetics that are hyper-realistic. They're super cool, but like they have body hair and tattoos and scars, cool. And I'm wondering how you feel about that in the encompassing of being a proud, badass activist, but also embracing the anonymity of having a prosthetic that could be concealed.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of like being, I mean, do not think I'm a superhero, but there's that other movie, the X-Men. So I moved from movies about China in my early life that were in different languages and sad French movies to action films. And I'm a big fan of that series for that reason. It's like, the thing that makes you different is the thing that makes you a badass. Like, you're a blue person, or you sprout wings, or, you know, whatever. I think it's fun to be able to be both. Mm-hmm. It's, in some ways, if you can think of it as a playful thing, like you have different kinds of bodies, different kinds of things you can do with it. That's just something that I've started to do when I realized I wanted to maybe mix up the prosthetic look a little bit because it's just so grim. And I was like, we need to have some like different things. So I've been working with this designer with covers and stuff like that. That's very new to me. But yeah, I mean, everyone's going to have a disability at some point in their life, seen or unseen. It's the biggest, most open category. So I think it's the more people can be open about it and honest about what they need to do what they need to do, the better. And I do think too we've had a lot of progress made in things like neurodiversity in the classroom and destigmatizing people who process information differently. It's really important, and it changes the classroom. It changes the quality of instruction, the quality of conversation, and people aren't like hiding something because they're ashamed to say it out loud, or they think people are going to judge them, whatever that might be, or not believe them, which happens a lot with invisible disabilities. I mean, sometimes people will be like, well, you can't park there with your placard. And I'm like, do you really? Do we want to, really? I'm like, do you want me to do you want to come over? Just get a little good look here. And of course I don't really need it, and then I feel bad, right? I mean, but there's an assumption, right? Oh, even yesterday, when they were, they're like on the plane, they're like, if you have a disability, you can board early, right? Sitting next to this woman, she's like, those people look fine to me. I was like, oh man, okay. So it's, everyone's gonna have one. It's and I what I love about my students is that they tend to gravitate into my classrooms because they know that it's like I hope a safe space for whatever they want to express about their bodies, their lives, and that is like magic. People being able to share a story that they thought was just about shame or just about waiting for punitive action, to be able to meet other people who are like, oh, me too, or wow, that's interesting, tell me more. No pity, right? But just like, oh, wow, curiosity versus pity. Yeah, super important.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We're all very different heights. Hi, my name's Carrington Carr. It's nice to meet you. I'm the secretary of the Disabled Student Union on campus. I'm also a disability studies minor. And I wanted to ask you about, in your book, Frida Kahlo and My Left Leg, you mentioned about how when you started your writing journey, it was kind of an outlet for you to cope with your disability. And I was wondering at one point, because you also talk about in Poster Child, how you didn't have a lot of confidence or a lot of ability to kind of acknowledge that part of yourself. So I was wondering what your journey was to where you decided to go from writing as kind of something for yourself to sharing that with the community and becoming an activist and putting in the work and becoming way more visible.
It's a good question. I mean, I would say also in my 20s, it was a late bloom for me. I went to divinity school to be a theology professor, religion professor. And I thought this was it for me. Like, I loved it. It was my undergraduate major, all the weird languages no one speaks anymore. Don't do any of that. Like, it's not really that useful. And I got to div school and I was like, oh my God, I'm so bored. I was like, I cannot talk about like Hegel and Kierkegaard. And I mean, they're interesting, and they're actually, 19th century religious philosophy does inform a lot of my work, but I was like, this is a snooze fest. And I didn't want to write a book suddenly, which surprised me, that like only my parents would read. And like my thesis advisors. I was like, I really want to say more things, and I really want to have more fun when I'm writing. Like, this is a drag, right? So I applied or auditioned. I didn't have to sing or anything, but we had to submit a story for a creative writing program, or for a creative writing class. So I submitted this story, and I got into this class. And the teacher's name was Brad Watson, and he recently died a few years ago. And he was the first mentor that I had who was like, this is what you should be doing. So it was basically one person saying, I mean, my parents were like, what? Like, they were like, you need to get a job. Like, career wasn't their jam. Like, they love me and whatever, but they're not, they're working class people. And they were just like, what's a career? Like, you need to get a job. What are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm going to get a job, but once I was hooked. That was it. I was like, no more dead languages, no more Greek translation, no more mental gymnastics unless it's for fun in a story. So for me, it was basically the belief of one professor who I mean, I was also a massive pain in the ass. Like, I would go a lot to his office, and I would write a bunch of drafts, and I always thought I was bugging him. But now, of course, when I'm a teacher, I can see the students that are just like, they come in all the time, and they're not a pain in the ass. It's exciting because they're really committed, right? So I was always a really great student. I loved being in school. And so this was just a different kind of school. And everyone thought I was nuts. But I knew it was right. I just knew it. There's very few things I've known for sure that are true, because I feel like that's kind of a hard thing to say about anything. But I knew, like, the first day in that classroom, I was like, yep, this is it. This is it for me. Yeah. And it was a great group of people. It was just a diverse group of people. And again, I had this amazing teacher. I've had amazing teachers who've been so supportive of me and championed me. And I mean, it's just such a beautiful mentoring. Mentoring is such a beautiful relationship. And I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here or probably be alive without it. So I think that's, I don't know if that answers your question.
It does.
Which I now forgot what it was. Anyway, sorry.
That
like
did
3 hours
answer
early
my
for me. I'm like,
question. Yeah, that was very inspiring. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
So come to office hours.
No, I'm always sitting there like, dude,
Yes.
Yeah. I'll start doing yoga, and then you'll really be horrified when you come in.
Wow, we are very different heights. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so in the topic of pain and creating, do you find yourself writing when a particular element of your pain comes to light? And if so, what is it, and how would you, describe it, if that makes sense? And also, did you see it, do you see similar things in Frida's work as well?
I do. I mean, I think, so there's a book that maybe is made of a hard sell, because it's called The Body in Pain. I know. Woo! By a writer called Elaine Scarry. So it's got a lot going on there in just the title and her name. But she talks about how pain is untranslatable. Like, you can't, so she studies people who say, does it feel like a hammer? Does it feel like a sting? Does it feel like a brick? And people really struggle to put words around wordlessness, like something that feels wordless, because you're so lost in the experience of it. I think what Frida does really beautifully in her work is a lot of it she does through color. And again, I know nothing about art, so just take this with a grain of salt. But it's easy to see, I think, the emotion that she's trying to create the minute you look at it. And I need that as someone who's not an artist, because if I just look at something that's an abstract painting, I have no clue what's going on. But their narrative, right? They're telling a story. I think the only way to really bear up against pain is to make of it a story, which in some ways is to make it other, right? To be able to take it and spin it and look at it from an external perspective. And that's really challenging to do. I think the hardest pain I've ever written about was losing my kid, the whole 2 years of just having to externalize that and just look at it. And it was nasty. And I would have so preferred to have someone been beating me up the whole time. It was just so intense. And I think I think part of what she does so beautifully is that she externalizes the pain in a way that doesn't fetishize it, but leaves it, we can enter into her paintings as if they were a story. Like the two Fridas with the hearts or whatever, the hearts that are connected. That could be about anything. But if you look at it, you already what's that story? And you create one. She leaves a lot of room for the viewer, in my opinion. Again, not an artist. But I think it's important in writing to leave room for your reader, right? Not tell them everything, but to let them bring in their own memories and ideas and set them down inside of your story. And then you're both telling the story, right? So it has to be an interactive thing. I think, and people can't bear pain on their own either, I don't think. One of the things I've learned as a mom is when my child goes in for any kind of procedure, I don't care what it is, and I'm if it hurts, you just scream your head off. You don't worry about it. Because when I was a kid, something awful would be happening to me, and I was totally silent. And they'd be, oh, good patient, good girl. And I was you just scream. You just make a scene. Don't you dare hide your pain if you want to. Whatever. She's I don't want to. But I'm it's fine. But, that whole, silencing it. Frida just refused to silence that part of it that was intense and visceral. And I think you sense that when you see her work, or I do. Yeah. And I think you feel that in writing, too. Some of my favorite writers are that way also. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Pearl. I'm a pre-med major and an English minor, so kind of two different worlds.
Busy.
Yeah,
You're busy.
very. And a question that I had was like, what is something that you hope like the medical community can like learn about people with disabilities?
Oh, that's a good question. Glad you asked that. So the two classes I teach in the medical school are one called Death at 8 in the morning, and one called Disability. And in the demographic of the med students that I teach, most of them are first-generation college students and now the first doctors in their family. And some of the things they share are like, I don't want to be a hospice doctor because my patients won't live, I'm a failure. So we talk about how to reframe that. Or with disability, it's like, they think, oh, I see a wheelchair, or I see someone who can't do things, right? And how do I handle like patient intake forms? And I'm like, well, the problem is you only have 7 minutes. Like there's that whole 7-minute rule for patient interaction. So we talk about ways to engage with someone just like if they have, if I go in and I have like a sty in my eye and someone's like, tell me about your leg, I'm be like, dude, not connected here. Like there's nothing going on. Like that's a very common thing in medical communities. Like you give your whole health history and you feel traumatized by your own health history. And then you're like, can I have an eye drop? It's like taking it for what it is. We talk a lot about that. I think, I worked on this book, which you might have read by Paul Kalanithi, called When Breath Becomes Air, who was a neurosurgeon who died when he was 38. And he died before he could finish the book, and his widow and I finished it together. And what I learned from that book was a lot, but also just like this ability to face straight on what's happening and to create context around it in a way that makes it bearable. I think that's what that book does really beautifully. And now I forgot your question.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
What is like something that the medical community should know
What
about people?
they
with
should.
disabilities?
I think the medical community, the people need to read. Like I know there's no time. Like sometimes when I assign my students like a chapter, medical students, like, can you assign us something as a paragraph? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I'll read it aloud to you and send you the recording. Like, no, I'm not going to assign you a paragraph. They're like, we have so much to read. So I think just like seeing the humanity in the medical field, like medical humanities is like the hot topic, right? People are always like, what does it mean? And I'm just like, it's about telling stories. Patients telling stories, doctors telling stories, doctors admitting they have a story, right? Even though they've had no sleep and no food and are really stressed out, right? So there's a lot of things right there that need to be shifted about the medical model. But I've seen it in practice. I've seen it in clinic when people to just take a breath and ask different kinds of questions. It makes a huge difference. And then it creates the trust, the medical trust you need, which is a different kind of intimacy between doctor and patient. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sasha, would you mind telling us what happens next before we end? Thank you.
Where do we go?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending, and thank you for such an amazing event. If you would like to follow us over to the Emily Lowe Gallery, I see what you mean, wherever she went. If you'd like to follow us over to the Emily Lowe Gallery, the exhibition we have featured this semester is Every Body, Every Mind, and it honors the 35th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act. And it also honors Hofstra's history and the great contributions that they've made, but also contemporary artists who are dealing with many different issues that I think from some of the questions you might relate to. So if you want to join us for a walk over, the author will be there, and you'll have an opportunity to have more of an informal conversation with her as well, which is always really nice. So I'll be standing at the back door, and if you'd like to walk over, we'd love to have you.
Thanks, Sasha. And also hold on, one more thing. Oh no, not you, you can sit. Before you do follow Sasha out and we go, the books are for sale, not just this book, but other books too by Emily Rapp Black are for sale back there, and Emily can sign them for you. You can bring them to the museum if you'd like. And just now, one last round of applause. Thank you, Craig, for putting this together, and thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you.